Hello and welcome to Access to HE. This is week 2 of the Business Communication Unit. And this week we're going to look at some of the purposes of business communication and some of the different methods of business communication. We're going to address the objectives from your assessment criteria. We're going to address 2.1, which is identify the key purposes of business communications. And we're going to address 2.2, which is assess the relative merits of different methods of communication. So we're going to look at some different methods, and then you're going to have to think about, what are the good points and bad points, strengths and weaknesses of these methods. So try to bear that in mind while I'm talking about it. And then you can also do some background reading if you want to look up on one method that maybe you don't know so much about, or you're not quite sure what the positives and negatives might be, then do some reading on your own as well. So that's something you always need to do, I'm sure. Let's start with what is business communication. Here's a little definition, really. In layman's terms, it revolves around how individuals exchange information within a work or business environment. So there you are at work, and it's literally about how you share information. And it includes all sorts of different forms: talking, writing, sharing ideas, and maybe sort of moving on to more complex communication solutions if you're trying to get things done. So if you think about if you're maybe in a management role, you may be looking at more complex ways, such as report writing, writing business reports, writing a strategy, writing a vision for the organization, a little bit more complex. On a day-to-day basis, though, it helps teams work together, it helps us all make decisions, and it helps to keep the business running smoothly. Whether it's just sending an email, getting together, having a chat, having a formal meeting, it's really about getting your message across. And if everybody gets their message across, you can achieve goals together for your organization. So let's think about the objectives. As I said, there's quite a few. Um, it does really help in expressing ideas. It helps to make plans, carry out decisions, and with good communication, you could avoid confusion, or more importantly, in a company, errors. So, one of the things to do is to present options and new business ideas, and that's for people to get together and sort of share ideas, thrash them out, think about what might work and what might not work. Another objective is to make plans and proposals. That's often writing a business plan, which is often something that the manager's involved in, but they may take feedback from you as a member of the team. And to do that, they might sit down, they might have some brainstorming, they might have a team meeting to do it in, and they might get your ideas that way. Executing decisions. And this is about carrying out what you've decided to do. People often choose to put it in writing, especially if it's a policy change or especially if it's an instruction that's quite important. If something, could go wrong, very often it will be put down in writing to make sure that everybody sees it and knows what to do and doesn't forget what the instruction is. Reaching agreements. That's really coming to mutual understanding. And again, to do that very often, um, if you've got sort of complex policies or complex strategies, then it's important that people have it written down, and they might want to go home and take some time to read over it and then sign that they know and understand what's going on. Sending or fulfilling orders. We mustn't forget that it's not just about internal communication, it's about dealing with the business as well. And communicating well, make sure that mistakes don't get made. You don't send 300 units to someone when they only wanted three, things like that. And that's all about good communication, really. And believe me, that happens all the time, I think. Um, so it's about making customers confident that they're going to get the right thing as well. And it's about everybody in the chain. It's particularly important in manufacturing. If you're in a factory and there's different steps in the chain, that everybody knows what the end order is to be and when it's to be for and when the customer's expecting it. Also, successful selling, back to interacting with the customer again. Really important how you advertise your product, and how you interact with the customer during the process. If it's a long process that customers got to wait for you to maybe create something and deliver it, then that sort of communication can be even more important. If it's something that you can knock out straight away, like if you're Amazon and you send something out in the next 5 minutes, makes it a little bit easier. But on the other hand, it's still, you still have to make sure that you've got the product right, because they have thousands of products, so they have to make sure it's right, which is why they tend to send you confirmation emails. Okay, even though they've probably already sent the product by the time they've written the email. That's something to think about as well. Okay, so successful selling, really important. Effective meetings. Good good communication in a meeting is really important to make sure a meeting is productive. If people are communicating badly in a meeting and the meeting doesn't achieve anything, it's going to be very hard to get people back to that meeting again, or to get them to take, willingly to take an active role in it. They've got to see that the consequence of the meeting is worthwhile to them. So how you communicate in that meeting and how well things get recorded is really important. Providing feedback to employees and customers. It's just about sharing thoughts and ideas and comments. Maybe people on the front end might get a lot of feedback from the customer, but the people in the back end in the manufacturing process might not always get that feedback. So it's really important that when you get customer feedback, it goes back to the people who are actually doing the work on it as well, because they can then be part of the change process. If you've got to change something because it's not working, they'll be part of it. And this gives them a healthy relationship with their management and their colleagues, because they know that what they're doing is working or not working, and they know what they need to do to change. So it can motivate employees. Obviously, if you're getting positive feedback, it's really nice for them to know that as well, not just the negative stuff. It's not just the things they have to change, but it's also, when you're getting a pat on the head from a customer to say, hey, that was great. Thank you. I really want to buy another one of those. The back office staff need to know that as well. So we're looking at the different types of communication. We'll start with the sort of very basic, which is which happens in every business, which is formal communication. And this is a structured way for employees to talk about work related. So it's often maybe a one-to-one with your manager, or it could be a team meeting where you all get together. You have to give some feedback. It could be something like a performance review, where your manager sort of sits down with you annually and talks about how well you're doing against certain objectives. So it could be formal communication. And also, if, as I said, policy or strategy decisions are being made at a more senior level and it comes down, it probably will be in the form of a written document, could be an email, it could be an internal instruction document that might go into your policy book. That's formal communication. Informal communication is something we all know about. It's much more casual communication, often amongst colleagues. It may not really be about work. It could be you just chatting around the water cooler, talking about what happened in EastEnders last night. And you could be talking about what you're planning to do for the weekend. But there is something quite important about that communication, even if it's actually not about the work process, as long as you don't do it too much. Because it fosters good relationships and makes people comfortable with each other. And it means that they often work together better in a way. Okay, so they're the two main types of communication. So some other types is direction. You may have heard about this. There's all different directions when you're working in a company. You've got the downward communication, you've got the upward communication, and you've got the horizontal communication, which is something that you might think is a bit more odd. Downward communication, you can probably guess what it is. It's information that flows from top level management through the ranks of management down to, I guess, the people at the bottom, the general hands on people. And managers use this to convey sort of goals and objectives, new procedures, as I said, new policy, new strategy, changes of the rules, decisions that they've made, and then just general day-to-day instructions. Very often they'll do it in writing to make sure there's no mistakes. So downward communication would be a manager maybe sitting down with their team, having a team meeting and talking to them about a new company policy that's been decided maybe by HR or maybe the board of directors, or a change in direction in the company. Output communication is, well, it's the complete opposite, really. It's when information moves from the lower level employees to higher management. And this is generally sort of known as a feedback procedure, where people, they might be given room to comment. We're going to do a new strategy. We're not sure, happy. We want to get the staff's feedback on it. So they might give you a sort of consultation time to have a look at the document and then come back and give some feedback on it. That's if it's a good organisation. Some organisations aren't very good at upward communication. It can be, some organisations don't do it at all. That's the honest truth. But those who do often tend to be very effective because they're actually listening to the people who do the hands-on work. Okay. It obviously gives them a lot of room. Like, you might have a simple one, like a suggestion box in the hallway, but at least people are getting feedback. And also, if staff have requests to change things or to do something different, there should be a process. Should be a process for that to happen and to go back up the management line to the board. Like I said, lots of good organisations do have these processes. You'll still find some who don't. Some of you may know it, some of you may work there. I don't know. But without a bit of upward communication, it's hard to hold on to staff if they feel they're not getting a chance to comment on things or not being part of it, or just not being listened to when something is going wrong. So it is quite important. Horizontal communication, this is about co-workers at the same level. And it's important for them to talk to each other so they can collaborate and work well together. So that communication is pretty much day-to-day communication, but it's really important. And you might get people from different teams who may be doing the same thing but work on different teams. They might collaborate on a particular project they might be invited to do. And a lot of people find that very stimulating and very interesting if they're looking at a project to maybe change a process or something like that. And people get quite a lot out of it, and you'll find those who choose to do it will often be quite motivated by the process. So that's quite important as well. Finally, with direction, we've got external. So we've got down, up, sideways, and then outside external. And this refers to your interactions with individuals outside the company. And this will be like your stockholders, like the board, will go and report to them, maybe on a regular basis. Very often they probably do it in writing, but sometimes they have annual general meetings where the shareholders will actually come and say things and ask questions. Obviously, on a more day-to-day basis, we are talking to suppliers. If you're a manufacturing company, you need to be talking to the people that you buy your bits from, or if you're a food company, the people who actually buy your meat and your bread in from, whatever. You might talk to partners, you might have partner agencies, If you're a social work company, you might work with other care. You might work with care homes. You might work with um, day services. So all sorts of different partnerships and regulatory organisations. Some of you might be in the statutory role where again you're regulated by an organisation related to the government. As I said, if you're in care work, for instance, you might be regulated by CQC. If you're in business, you might be regulated by the financial advisory schemes. You might be regulated by trade descriptions, all sorts of things, and or the tax office. So all these people you need to communicate with on different levels, really. External communication is really important because it supports increased sales. If you talk to your customers and your suppliers, you know what's going on, everybody knows who needs what, and everyone knows when they're going to get things. And that will improve your operations, make them more efficient, and generally improve your sales performance as well. Okay, mode of expression. This is the third and final type, really. And it's sort of going back to the basics, really, the simple oral and written communication. Um, this involves sort of spoken words, discussions, strategies, face-to-face meetings, Zoom and Teams, lectures, and it relies on body language and verbal intonation. It's a bit like us at the moment. You're getting some verbal uh, interaction with me. You're hearing where I'm emphasizing things, and I will, as the weeks go by, I will sort of tell you things that you need to remember, and I'll stress on what bits are more important than others. So quite important oral communication and written communication is things like your emails, your texts, your notes, documents, business plans, anything really that's a written form, a policy, a strategy. And these methods will simplify communication by providing really clear information. So with oral communication, an example of that is maybe again a team gets sitting around together, brainstorming an idea or some area maybe that they need to change a process. So they're brainstorming ideas, chatting about it, thinking about it, and just bouncing off each other. Written communication is like sending an email, asking a question, or maybe writing up a report or writing up a business plan, really, to prepare for a business meeting where you're going to do some key findings. It might be putting a presentation together. You're doing a presentation to senior management on your um, sales results over the last quarter. Okay, so why is it important? Why does it really matter that we have effective communication? Well, lots of reasons really. What can it help with? There's a little graphic there for you to sort of give you some quick thinking ideas. But the first thing is democratization. So that's about using democratic decision planning and decision making. And it's about hearing from different groups. Like I said, sometimes the guys in the back office who are actually hands on don't often get heard. So, good business communications, having a process where they can actually feed into is quite important. To boost morale and motivation, this is really important because high motivation and morale improves productivity. Research has proved that. Um, but people actually, again, being involved, it makes them feel like maybe there's more that I can do, maybe I can contribute. They feel good, they get job satisfaction out of it, and they're motivated to sort of join in and do more things. Good communication improves relationships. Again, people giving people space to exchange ideas um, is definitely a healthy thing to do. It gives them better relationships. Um, well, I mean, sometimes when people exchange ideas, they can actually fall out as well. So we do have to think about that. There is always that negative side. But again, if the exchanges as a team, hopefully people will come together and sort it out in a good functioning team. But generally, communicating well does improve relationships. If people are often left in the dark or they don't know what's going on, they come on in the morning and something happened the night before when they weren't there, or they were off at an appointment or off at a meeting and they missed out on something and it hasn't been passed on to them, and they talk to a customer and they don't know what the problem is, it all starts to sort of crumble. Job fulfillment, that's really about the same as motivation and morale. Good communication makes people sort of know where they are in their job. They get higher job satisfaction. If people are aligned with the objectives, then they'll perform better. They'll have good performance reviews. There's more chance of them getting promotion, developing themselves, moving on if they're able to communicate properly. Again, if they're left in the dark, it's very hard for them to contribute. And in the end, they will resent that, and they'll lose motivation to be part of the team. Putting those together, it leads to higher efficiency. And it also means that, if people are communicating well, silly mistakes don't get made and the wrong product doesn't get sent out to the customer, making the customer angry, making other people angry, and it all gets passed down again to the poor person. So if a good fostering of collaboration means people become more practiced at working together as well. And if they work together, then again they tend to become more efficient because someone can step in if someone's got a lot on. They can often be a supportive team as well. Smooth operation of the business sort of speaks for itself, really. If people don't communicate across the different levels of the business, then, as I said earlier, mistakes will get made. There'll be sort of lots of negative feedback. Um, Money will be wasted. Maybe the wrong product has been sent out, or maybe the wrong product has been bought, or maybe the wrong supplies have been bought because they thought they wanted this and not that. Imagine in a restaurant, if people aren't communicating, if the waitress isn't communicating to the kitchen what the person wants to eat, and if they've got any particular, if they want their meat rare or undercooked or well, and if they want beef or if they want chicken, and they come out and they bring the wrong meal, that doesn't go down very well. It's bad for your reputation, but it means the business isn't functioning properly. It means that they're not cooking the right meals, and that's going to frustrate everybody, really. So it's really important. It also facilitates decision making, helps managers actually make more efficient decisions. Sometimes, if they don't communicate well with the wider team, they'll make a sort of decision in a vacuum. If they haven't really got other people's views or haven't got the feedback on where things are really going wrong, they might go off on the wrong tangent and make a decision that isn't really what the team wanted them to do. I mean, it's possible they could do that anyway, because some managers are like that. But on the other hand, if you can encourage them to be communicating well, then at least they'll understand what the people are saying to them. So it's really important. So it's about being up to date with your knowledge. It's about getting information from various sources and about explaining it, passing it on and explaining it on well to your staff. Good communication leads to proper planning. Again, if you're not communicating with your team, then you make plans that might not work. So you might have done a plan, but it might not be a proper plan. It might not be the right plan. It might not be the most relevant plan. And if you do that, you could take the team down the wrong route. Money could be wasted. Time could be wasted. Reputation could suffer as well. So again, if you're going to plan, you need to if you're going to use data, and we're going to be looking at using data a bit later on in the course, if you use data, it's got to be accurate. It's not got to be last year's data or 5 years ago data. It's not got to be data that you guessed. It's not got to be data that you think might be relevant. It's got to be data that's real. It's got to be something you could evidence to the other people in the team. So don't be a Donald Trump and just say I'm making data because, you know, this is what I think, because you might not be right. And finally, it is probably one of the most important things of all, good communication minimizes conflict. So it avoids arguments, it avoids people falling out, it avoids people, if you don't communicate clearly, then people won't know what you mean, what you want to say. They might misunderstand you and go off and do the wrong thing, which could cause lots of problems for your organization. It could upset your customer, but it could also have people falling out with each other. If you give an instruction to someone and they're not clear, and maybe you've sort of bullied them a bit into doing it anyway, it's going to cause a conflict. People are going to fall out with you, so you will lose staff. Your recruit, it will be hard for you to recruit because word goes around in the area that you're not a very nice person to work for. So you need to think about those sorts of things. And good communication generally stops people disagreeing, encourages people to agree with each other better as well. So we've got lots of reasons why it's important to communicate well. So have a little think of your own. See if you can think of any more that I haven't thought of. Do a bit of wider reading. Okay, so now we're going to look at the methods of communication. Okay, 2.2 asks us to assess the relative merits of the different methods. So I'm going to just talk you through the different methods, but I would also like you again to do a bit of wider reading on it. But before we go on, just take a moment to jot down some of your ideas of the different ways people communicate in their business, both with staff and customers, suppliers, anybody really, okay? Different, all sorts of level of communication. We've talked a lot about verbal and written communication, but I'd like you to sort of have a think at a slightly different level about what methods and tools they could use. So yes, it's probably either verbal or written, but what methods and tools can you use? So I'd like you just to pause your video for the moment and just have a little think, jot down some ideas, and then when you're ready, move on and see what I suggest, okay? And see if we've come up with some of the same ideas. So take some time, make some notes. Okay, let's think about methods then. Methods one is digital communication, something we do all day, every day, especially nowadays. And this includes all sorts of different networks, such as email, instant messaging, those of you who like to do WhatsApp, and various other of your socials as well, really. Even down to the humble text message. So, what's the advantage of this? The advantage of this is the speed of it, really. People tend to respond very quickly, particularly to the non-emails. So, you know, emails very much you have to be in the office maybe, or you have to, people take more time to think. But instant messaging such as WhatsApp and text, people tend to respond very, very quickly. I'm sure you all know that. So the advantages of it is that you can have quite a quick discussion, and it can actually be anywhere really. I mean, I said here in a busy workplace setting, maybe some of you will be in a place where you can't be using your phones in a setting, but it's also quite good if you're traveling, if you're sort of someone like a salesperson who has to go out and about a lot, or if you've got more than one office, or if you work from home, lots of us do now, that I do. Um, so you can actually function very quickly with instant messaging. So it's an absolute godsend. Um, Not that many negative things. Can have a think about it. I think the one thing I would say that's negative, especially with the instant messaging, is that some people don't think before they respond. And probably if they're busy or distracted, they might not think their response is through, which can have a negative effect. But the positives, I think, probably outweigh the negatives if you do it well. And the good thing is look, with the press of a button, not only can you respond to one person, but you can actually send stuff out to hundreds of people. So again, can be really valuable. It's incredibly economic with time. You can reach a lot of people very quickly. Importantly, you might get 100 responses as well, which is a bit harder to actually work through. But that, generally one would consider it as a sort of valuable resource. More positives than negatives. Okay, telephone meetings. Since we got WhatsApp, probably don't get done quite as much. They are quite efficient and they're also very fast paced. And again, you can do it from anywhere. You could be working from home, you could be on the bus. Although I would say to you, if you are on the bus, please remember confidentiality and make sure that what you're saying is not something that would cause a problem if all the folk on the bus behind heard it. And you may laugh at that, but I do know that that has happened in very confidential situations. So it does happen. It does allow for a better exchange of ideas than your written one because you've got the addition of tone of voice and other non-verbal signals, really. So people's voices go up and down. You can sort of see when someone's pressured. You can see when someone's, if it's your manager, whether they're irritated with you or not by their tone of voice, which you can get through in an email sometimes, depending on how they write it. But it is a lot easier on the phone, as you can imagine. And I think on the phone, people tend to be a lot sharper and quicker. But then again, sometimes you have reception problems, which means that someone might mishear, might maybe quite an important detail, like an account number or something like that. So that can be a problem. That's a bit of a negative. But with modern telephony now, you can have like conference calls, which are quite valuable. Probably best done when you're in the office, really. But if you have got one person who's struggling to come back from somewhere, they can at least be in part of the call if they sit down in a coffee bar or something. Again, remember confidentiality. So somewhere that's probably between the two is video conferencing, and this is using your Zoom or your Teams, as in the graphic here. So it's enabled distant workers to meet regularly, but they are actually meeting in person. So you've got the proper contact because you actually see you've got eye to eye contact, face to face. So you're getting the benefits of the phone, but you're getting all someone's facial expressions and their body language as well. So you're really getting an idea. So if you think your manager really wasn't happy with what you just said, you stand a much better chance of knowing about it when you're on a Zoom call, say, than when you're on the telephone. So very often it's taken over for where people can actually do it. But again, they generally need to be sitting down at a desk, or as a telephone, you can do it from the bus stop if you do it. So there are some positives and negatives. Although some people will sort of join in on FaceTime if their smartphone allows them to, so they can put those two together. But I don't think it works very well when people are FaceTiming, on the train and things like that. Again, confidentiality is an issue, and generally, you should treat like Zoom or Teams as as a desk space, as if you're in a meeting, so you can actually make some notes, and that's probably when it's most valuable, really. But if it's an emergency, it can be done, which is gives it that added value. Okay, so these are our first three. So the next one is the actual in-person meeting, and just as valuable. You can probably say a bit more because people are there in a more comfortable situation. They're not traveling, they don't have confidentiality issues, they're sat in the room together. In person, there's a lot of research that says in person meetings do generate better ideas than virtual ones. When people are actually, they're able to interrupt each other and, join in and pull out again. And I think when you are actually on a real face-to-face situation, that people stay more engaged as well. So if you're doing a meeting, if you're a manager who's doing a meeting where you want to talk about a new policy and maybe it's a bit complex, then you might find an in-person meeting is better because you can keep people on board. And if you are losing them, you can see what's going on. One of the things that happens with Zoom meetings is that people can switch off their Zoom, really, because some people may choose not to put their video on, and you actually don't know if they're even in the room sometimes because they may be quiet, but you can't always assume that people are talking all the time. But for all you know, they may have gone and made a cup of tea and left you. In-person meetings not quite the same. People are very much engaged, very much on board. And if you are losing someone, you can see it straight away. So quite important. However, there are negative issues about in-person meetings. They are time consuming. They often take longer than planned. They can get off the point. It's very important to have a good solid agenda and to have maybe someone chairing it who sticks to it and manages the meeting quite well, because I'm sure all of us have sat in meetings that have gone on and on for ages and gone off the point. No decisions get made, and it's really, really frustrating. And if that happens, it's very hard to get people back to a meeting, or somehow they'll find a way to get out of it. And they're not that constructive. It's also really important to have the right people there. So if you want a meeting with just certain people who are doing a certain part of the operational process, don't just get everybody and the cat in just because you think, oh, it might be useful. It may well be useful, but you can find a way that they can feed in. You can get the most important people in, and then you can put it out for a bit of a wider consultation on email or something like that. But if you have too many people in the meeting, it's really, really difficult to come to a resolution, you can imagine. Okay, number 5, we're looking at official reports. So documenting activities that influence other individuals, it's really essential that a report is written up. A formal document is really helpful. So you go into a meeting and you usually, go into a meeting with senior management. If you've written a report out beforehand and circulated it to them, you can ask people to refer to things. You don't have to explain every single thing because hopefully they've read it. So it does reduce confusion because it means they can check something up if they didn't understand it. Or if there was something they didn't understand in the report, they've got the feedback meeting to question that, saying, can you just clarify this statistic? I'm not quite sure what you meant by that. Very useful. So having a report to go with you to a meeting is a really, really viable option. It really improves communication. The only problem is when you send out really long reports to senior managers, you often find they haven't read them. Believe me, I've been in many a meeting where I've circulated reports and they haven't read them. So the most important thing is to do an executive summary at the beginning for the guys that you know do not have the time to read all the detail. Because what you can do then is when you're discussing it, you can say to them, okay, if they've got a question that's and the answer's in your report, you can say, okay, if you turn to page 17 and have a look with me, this explains the data that made why I suggested this decision. So it's quite important. But yeah, one thing I have learned is an executive summary when you're dealing with people at very senior level, your local SMT, senior management team, they often don't get the time to read a 28-page report. So the executive summary is really, really important. We're going to have a look at that when we look at a little bit about business planning towards the end, about writing a business report. I'm going to go through a little bit with you about what's important to have in it and what's not. Okay, presentations. Again, another way of dealing with it. You can have a report. As I said, if it's got 28 pages, it won't read it. But if you do a presentation to go with it, then they've got everything, really. Those that want to read it will read it. Those that don't will just read the summary, but they'll love the presentation. As long as it's not long and really, really boring. Okay, that is a problem. But generally, the addition of graphics and pictures helps a lot of people. It's great if you're showing data. Um, Even in your business report, if you're showing data, it's important to show it in graphs really rather than just writing, because people can't absorb data in that way. But if you're showing it on a PowerPoint, it can be a lot more effective because you can use color and you can use movement and that, as you can see in the graphic there. And people can stop you and ask questions as well. So it's got that added little, sort of live feel to it. It really allows for questions and explanation. So a popular one. Okay, method 3, discussion boards and FAQs. Some organisations, especially larger organisations, will have a space for employees to feedback on things or to ask questions. They might just put an FAQ, frequently asked questions, list up on the wall and then say, if your questions aren't answered, speak to human resources or speak to this manager. And that's a very well organized organization. Not all of them will do that, but if they do, it can be really useful. Or they can either do an online discussion board, or they can be a physical one in a hallway, or it can be circulated by email, or it could be something a little bit flashier using social media, where they send it around to all their staff. Or they send it outside as well to find out information. So discussion boards can be really valuable. Surveys, the dreaded survey. Surveys do achieve things. They are useful for gathering information. And if you're if you're doing a change process and you need to keep registering improvements, say like on a quarterly basis, or if you're in an organization that has a lot of goals with reporting mechanisms, surveys can be really useful. Lots of negatives about surveys. You can overdo them and people get fed up, they get surveyed out. And that could be your customers or it could be your staff. If you give them so many surveys, they don't have time to do their job. They get pretty fed up with you. So surveys need to be focused, clear, short and sharp, really. Is probably the best way of putting it. So someone who sends you a 50-question survey, when you're on your break, is not really going to be very popular. Okay, so just think about that. There is a real art to doing surveys. It's sort of like a whole course on its own. They can be incredibly valuable, but they shouldn't be your only way of getting information, because You may have spent many hours on creating a survey, but somebody else might not care that much. So they might just whip off some answers. What you don't know is that the answers they answer you today may be very different from what they say tomorrow, depending on the mood they're in, or what happened to them this morning, or whether they missed the bus on the way to work. So it's just, you've just got to bear that in mind. And I wouldn't use it as the be all and end all of your answers, like our politicians do love to. This report from this group said, the Mori poll said, this is how we get polls during elections, and they're often wrong because some people don't want to answer. They're embarrassed about what they've done. They think it's none of your business, so they don't give you the true answer, or they lie because they just feel like it because it's fun. So be careful with surveys, and as I said, the worst thing is overdoing it. Now, any of you who buy something online are probably getting used to having surveys for every single thing you've bought, be it an outfit from Boohoo or whether you've just bought some sellotape. I do not want to fill in a survey about sellotape. I might fill in a survey about a restaurant I've been to, but some people will send you a survey for everything, and you lose the will to live, really, because you just get surveys from the same. If you use the same company and they survey you every time you order something, then in the end it becomes pointless, doesn't it? And most people either stop filling all the questions in or just write silly things because it's just, yeah, it's a way of teaching them a lesson, I think, sometimes. So bear in mind, surveys have their place, but do not put your be all and end all trust in them. Okay, the last thing we're looking at is customer relationship management. And this is about how you talk to your customers. And it could be live chat, generally online. It could be using a help desk, for help and advice and feedback. It could be reviews, like doing a Google review on a hotel or a restaurant. I quite like doing those. Some people don't. I do. But they can be quite useful, and I certainly do like checking them. Chatbots. Let's have a think about chatbots. What's our experience on that? Sometimes it's good. I wouldn't call it live chat. I think very often I think they're quite dead. But most of us usually press everything until we can actually get through to the human being, because it's very rare that you do something where the robot resolves everything for you. I've done a little graphic here for you, a sort of I hope you see it as something. Well, I hope you haven't experienced it, but you probably have. But I hope you see how annoying things like that are. And yes, I mean, we know it's, early days in technology, and we're all going to have to be patient with it. And I'm sure they're going to get better and better as time goes on. But it is pretty soul destroying again. And I think you may find that a lot of organizations have resorted to this, but you don't have another way out. So if people really, if you bought something that really isn't working and you're pretty annoyed about it, these things don't help. So just bear that in mind. Again, customer relationship management, very, very important. And if that's the only one that you've got, people will get very fed up with you if all they're talking to is a robot that doesn't know what you're on about, because they don't understand what you're trying to say. So again, if you see that, water bottles, quite a simple question really. Can you take water bottles into an event? I'm going to a gig, I want to take some water bottles. Can I take it? No, we don't do takeaways. Okay, whatever. I mean, this is useless is probably the politest thing that I've written to some chatbots. I have certainly written some other things about what an idiot the machine is. However, so think these things through. They've all got great possibilities, but they're at the moment. It could be just the development of technology is not quite there yet, or it could be that people don't think it through the way they use them. So, as I said, all got possibilities and all worth thinking about. You are going to write about that as a little bit of your assignment. You are going to pick on a few things. So it's up to you to decide which ones that you want to look at. Okay, finally, on your resources, there'll be a document about creating a communication strategy. I'd like you to take a bit of time to read that. It's just to give you an idea of how it all works, really. And there's going to be a link on your resource area to do a little short quiz on business communication. See how you do. I've just put the link there. You probably won't be able to do it from the video, but I'll put the link on your site as well so that you can just go out and have a click on it. So it's just 10 short questions, really. Won't take you too long, but it'll just either reassure you that you understand everything we've talked about or not. Okay? So that's it. That's it from me for this week. And I look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to be talking about good practice in electronic communication. Okay. Thanks very much, and I'll see you then.